Well, we were all just standing around an ash can warming ourselves up for the spring game.
Good news is Michael Cohen is not my attorney. The bad news is a lot of guys that you're going to see highlights of in the show opening have graduated.
You guys have heard the expression Christmas in July, right? Like those fundraisers. This is the football equivalent. We've got football in April. We love it. We got Blue White Weekend and the Blue White Tailgate coming up next.
It's a beautiful spring weekend for football. And not only that, the Paterno Family Run taking place on Sunday into Beaver Stadium to benefit Special Olympics.
Absolutely.
There's a lot going on this weekend, and the weather's cooperating beautifully for it, which is the great news. Steve, Jay, Todd, great to have you with us. So we finally get to this weekend. I think, Todd, you set the table. It's that little teaser for everybody.
Yeah, this is like the official beginning of our season, right? We get a little hint of some blue-white tailgate in the spring to get us rolling into the fall. And look, if you like to watch Penn State on one side of the ball, it's double the pleasure. You get to watch them on both sides of the game at Beaver Stadium, and to see them come out of the tunnel and play some football there, it's always special.
And you know Penn State's going to win. I guess flip side, you can say Penn State's going to lose. But regardless, it's a fun day for kids.
Right. The one thing you don't want is, for example, like with Pete Massero years ago when Pete got hurt in the game. It's the only thing you don't want. After that, you're okay. Everything else is cool. There's autographs. They get to play. Kids get to walk in the field. Right. Then we got the run the next day on Sunday. It's a lot of fun.
No question. I think the good thing is this gets young people around the state and around the Northeast that maybe wouldn't get into Beaver Stadium for a game to get to see the guys like McSorley and the guys they want to see. And it's a good time for a family.
And by the way, Ryan Buchholz, going into a game like this, he gives us a lot of tips as to what to look for.
I mean, it's like the one thing you look forward to in the offseason just because it's cool coming out of the tunnel and being in front of all those people. It's more laid back, obviously. It's not a real game, but it's still cool being out there, especially for the first-year guys and the guys who haven't played yet on Beaver Stadium. So I remember going out there that first time. It was awesome.
That guy's become a leader, too. I mean, that's something that's also fun to see, isn't it, Jay, watching young guys then evolve into leadership roles?
Oh, no question. And, you know, you come into a place like Penn State your first day and you think you have all the answers from high school and you realize you have no answers, and then you start to develop the answers and learn. And everything about Buchholz that you hear is he's helping young players, and I think that's how you build a program.
PSECU Update Desk, Allison Luthman standing by.
Welcome to your PSECU pregame update, bringing you everything you need to know in the happenings of Penn State football. Guys, it is finally Blue-White Weekend, and there's so much more going on than even just the game. Saturday morning, 9 a.m. to 1 p.m., Fan Fest is going to be right on Curtin Road outside Beaver Stadium. Fans can have some interactive displays, events, vendors, a lot of cool stuff going on. And if you're up and at 'em on Sunday morning, the Paterno Family and Beaver Stadium 5K will be at 11 a.m. Now, as last season seniors are preparing to graduate and leave Penn State, a lot of them are leaving behind some very impressive numbers to show their accolades on the field, but a couple are showing equally impressive numbers for their academic careers. Billy Fessler, Brandon Smith, Grant Haley, all named to the NFF Hampshire Honor Society. Guys, this is a really big deal. To even be a member of this honor society, you need to be a starter or a major contributor during your final season of eligibility and maintain a minimum 3.2 cumulative GPA. Billy Fessler maintained a 3.4 GPA while earning all Big Ten honors this season and is a three-time Dean's List selection. Grant Haley maintained a 3.38 GPA and earned 3 berths on the academic all Big Ten team during his time at Penn State. And lastly, Brandon Smith maintained a 3.83 GPA and 2 perfect 4.0 semesters and 8 Dean's List appearances. He also has a 2-time academic All Big Ten selection and 2016-2017 Big Ten Distinguished Scholar. Guys, a lot of good stuff there, and that's been your PSECU pregame update.
In fact, the three of us combined went 4-0. Okay.
If you add I get what you're doing there.
All right. James Franklin, getting into Beaver Stadium is important that's part of an additional test moving forward.
It's just another opportunity to go out and evaluate the guys. You know, you guys have heard me say before, a lot of times you go into the stadium and it's different. I'd like to get into the stadium more during spring ball. I'd like to get into the stadium more during camp. With the weather this year, we weren't really able to do that as much as I would have liked. But you know, just going into the stadium for some guys, you know, on Saturday, Micah Parsons comes up to me with wide eyes about being in the stadium. So I think, you know, getting in there and being able to do that is important.
Jay, there's certain drills that you run, there's certain sets that you run. Is this another additional step, especially for guys that haven't done it before, just to get, okay, let's go out there with 70,000, 75,000 people?
Yeah, no question about it. And it's a different environment. You get different film, better evaluation. But there's also a flip side. There are a number of new coaches on this staff.
Yeah.
So this is a good chance for them to start communicating with each other during the course of a game and understand how that'll work too. So I think that's important.
It's a first look at the new roster, at new coaches, everything. It's a fresh look at a new team for 2018. It's going to be fun.
And part of our fresh look at a new team is to take a look at the offense next as we continue after this. Well, the offense certainly loses some parts, but they also have some key parts back. Jay, how important is it to have your quarterback back to start with?
Well, if you have your quarterback back, I mean, you look at, I would guarantee Ohio State would love to have their quarterback back, even with all the guys they have back. A guy that pulls your trigger for you, but to say there's been some losses would really be an understatement.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. No doubt about it. I mean, Saquon Barkley, Mike Gesicki, Deshaun Hamilton. I mean, you know, the list goes on and on. This was, you know, we've been spoiled, quite frankly, the last couple of years. Watching these guys play offense, they're all gone. But the great thing is there's been a lot of competition behind them. There's a lot of talent still on the roster and some exciting new players to look at. And these are the things that, it doesn't matter what sport it is, it doesn't matter what level, who's going to step up next and who's going to be the guys to shine when you need them to. And that's always what the blue-white game is about for me, is who are those names that you start to hear and you've been hearing about in spring practice and you finally get to see them perform.
Well, next Thursday night, Saquon Barkley will hear his name early in the NFL draft. He leaves behind some very impressive numbers along the way. Rush yards, he's second all-time to Evan Royster there. Rush TDs, all-purpose yards, total touchdowns. I mean, this guy, well, look, there's certain guys that are generational players. That's how I've turned him when I've done interviews. I think Todd, to me, he's been a generational player.
Hey, look, no doubt about it. I mean, and it's just, I guess, like I said, it's the spoils of watching the talent, and it's the all-around capabilities of someone like that. It's not someone that you just watch on first down or second down. You know, you look all the way every single time he's on the field, right? You're looking for something special to happen, whether he's touching the ball or not, first, second, and third down, and those guys don't come around very often.
There's also, in today's world, we know there's a lack of patience. I'm going to go in, I'm going to play right away. What does it tell you about Miles Sanders that he waited, quote, his turn, and now here it is?
Well, first it tells me Saquon Barkley's pretty dang good.
Yeah, sure.
If Miles Sanders isn't on the field, there's a reason. But it tells you that the guy, he's patient. And you know, he's got some maturity at this thing, and hopefully he has a couple good years left, that he's not, doesn't have a great year and jump immediately. But I don't think that'll be the case, but I think it says something about him and his character.
After the Fiesta Bowl, Jack Ham and I had talked with Miles Sanders, and I think at one point Jack said, when are you going to get back to work? He said, Monday. Well, that's exactly what he's done. Miles Sanders went back to work right away because he knows the golden opportunity is at hand.
It's going real good. Just finding that I'm just getting more comfortable in that more leadership role. Just trying to be more mature and lead by example and be more vocal. So that's what I'm trying to focus on this spring.
Mark Allen, Journey Brown, they've got some running backs there, but they also have an offensive line. I think finally, numbers-wise and talent-wise, is finally getting to the spot where I think they want it to be.
That's one of the things we'll be looking for, too, is, you know, one of the things what you have with a deeper roster is there's not so much difference between the first and the second unit, right? I mean, so, but the offensive line is a unit that you want to have cohesion. You know, on the defensive line and the rotations, you want to keep the guys fresh. You want in and out. Offensive line, though, Jay, it's really, you want to keep some of those same guys. So they're trying to identify their top five that they can put out there.
Well, communication is so vital because, you know, the offensive line has the most difficult adjustments of anybody on the field because they're right up against it, and those stunts on defense happen right away. They've got to react. They've got to talk. They've got to make calls based on alignment. So yeah, you want those 5 guys playing together. You want them all speaking the same language and understanding and anticipating. So that's going to be something to watch on Saturday and certainly into the fall.
Guys like Alex Gellerstadt, C.J. Thorpe, Des Holmes, for example, Mike Miranda, some names that you might watch for in that offensive line coming up this week. K.J. Himmler's another guy to watch. He's caught the eye of Amani Oruwariye and Ryan Buchholz.
Yeah, KJ definitely is standing out a lot. He's making some plays. He's a guy that was hungry last year to play. Obviously didn't get his opportunity last year, but this year he's definitely ready to take a bigger role.
Probably KJ. He's been all over you guys. You've heard about it. He's been doing well. Sometimes the quarterback does get sacked, but on his big touchdowns, Will Franklin let the play go. So I'll give him credit. He's getting by the D-backs and making big plays. So it'll be cool to see what he does this year.
Yeah, they have people to replace there. K.J. Himmler, Mac Hippenhammer, another name too to watch.
Look, it's almost an embarrassment of riches in that position group. I mean, they've got a lot of talent, and K.J. Himmler, you can describe him as both quick and fast, which is always nice to see. But don't forget about Brandon Polk. He's got a special relationship with Trace McSorley. I mean, the other part of all that plays into this, guys, is what formations is Ricky Ronning going to want to run out there? And when you have this kind of talent, this kind of size, Justin Shorter's coming on board in the fall. Jawan Johnson, you almost haven't even mentioned him. He was last year's guy that everybody talked about. So there is something to the K.J. Himmler talk when you hear players talk about it, because Jawan Johnson was that guy they were discussing last year. So we'll see what kind of formations they roll out there, because they got a lot of talent at that position.
Time now for the ace of Hardware State College position to watch. And for us, the position to watch will be Jay.
Tight ends was what we talked about, and obviously losing Gesicki and as vital as he was to this offense and how he changes coverages, very similar to what you have in New England when Gronkowski's in the game. You know, if they can't find a guy that threatens people like that, then that's going to open the defense to lay off and play some other guys. Yeah,
and I'll mention the formations again. If they don't find somebody like that, you may see 4 wide receivers on the field a little bit more often. They do have some really talented freshmen coming in. Zach Kuntz is one of them, and Coach Franklin mentioned that he's stronger than he thought maybe he would be when they were talking about the strength and conditioning. And for tight ends, they can handle some of the workload as freshmen, but you just have to be strong enough if you're asked to block, to be able to move some of the linemen in the Big Ten. So we're going to see how those guys continue to develop.
That's the offense. The defense next after this. Welcome back. We've talked about the offense. Now for the defense. I feel like we're about to warp into a Geico commercial here. Defense wins championships, Jay.
No, that's right.
No, did you leave the door open, Tyler? Are we trying to heat the outdoors too? All right, so let's take a look at the defense and what it does, and we have some numbers to back that. This is what they've come up with. They've been really good defensively the last few years. There's no question about that.
No question about it, and I think they've been aggressive up front. They get to the quarterback. They get turnovers. I think that's maybe the biggest thing is people talk about how productive the offense was. They got a lot of short fields, and they got a lot of turnovers from the defense that set them up for points. So
I remember talking about it. You mentioned the turnovers, Jay. I remember talking about that last year. That was one of the storylines coming in. They need to create some turnovers, some more interceptions from the secondary, which was all senior laden, and they did that. They were able to create those turnovers, which obviously creates field position for the offense and leads to more points. But it's not going to be just about individuals, guys, with the defense. Your eyes will go to position groups. I mean, they got to replace everybody in the secondary and most of the linebacking core. So there's a lot of question marks on the defensive side of the ball.
And then to set up the defense, of course, is the defensive front. Allison Luthman takes a look at the defensive front.
With a lot of turnover in the Penn State defense between the 2017 and 2018 seasons, Franklin says that means he needs to experience defensive ends to step up while his defensive tackles develop.
Good about that group. A lot of guys that have played a lot of football for us, a lot of athleticism. I think we're in a really good place. We're pretty confident about where we're at defensive end. It needs to be a strength of our defense while our D tackles grow and mature inside, and the same thing at Mike linebacker. So I think, obviously we had a lot of turnover in terms of 4 seniors in the secondary leave, but the guys behind them have played a lot of football, and the defensive ends should be able to help with that as well in terms of getting pressure on the quarterback.
One of those guys in that defensive end group, Ryan Buchholz, who told us it's been exciting to watch the transitions taking place in the defense.
The other day, Joe Dumont, who's switched to defensive end, he's not used to it yet, but this one play he surprised us. He did a double hand swipe on one of our tackles and got right by him and sacked the quarterback, and we all went crazy because it's Joe. Like, he was a linebacker and now he's the end, so it was just cool seeing him transition like that and make a big play.
And with the spring game being here in Beaver Stadium this coming Saturday, he said some of those younger players are a little bit nervous, but his advice to them, it's just another practice, but except this one is in front of a lot of people. Guys.
Thank you very much, Allison. Time now for the Timberland Federal Credit Union position to watch. All right, Todd, we'll start with you. What is the position that you'll be watching on defense?
I want to watch the secondary, and I want to see John Reed. I want to see how healthy he is, how he's moving back there. It's, yes, we lost all 4 seniors. Penn State lost all those 4, but we're also going to have a senior laden or have a veteran guy come in, John Reed, and then of course you're watching some of the linebacker play too. So you got to mention that. And number 11, it's going to be weird to see number 11 out there, with Micah Parsons, and that body shape reminds us all of someone else.
Well, I think it's the linebackers. It doesn't matter what year it is. It doesn't matter how many guys you got back. When you start with the defense, especially Penn State, you better have great linebacker play. And when you start to look at the teams that are going to play early on, Pitt is going to be a power run game.
Yep.
Michigan State's going to be a power run game. Those linebackers are going to find out how good they are pretty quickly.
Actually, in some ways, Ohio State can run a power run game because now it's going to be interesting to see how Ohio State plays because they've always had Elliott, Weber. They've always been like lead blockers for that quarterback run. How much do they run the quarterback this year? I don't know.
That's what, and I was just going to bring up that point. You mentioned Ohio State. It may not necessarily be a power run game, but they're going to be running the quarterback as they get their feet wet. And that game's in late September, as we know, whiteout conditions for that. So that is going to be interesting, too, to see how the linebackers react to a running quarterback. That's always one of the more difficult assignments.
Jay, obviously, it's different with everybody. Everybody has their own different development clocks. Which is something a coach has to realize what a development clock is. How much do you think, in general, freshmen coming in early and playing spring ball helps?
Depends on the guys, but when you look at wideouts, wideouts can come in and play pretty quickly. Linebacker is one of those ones. The extra 15 practice is going to be critical, but again, till you get into real game speed, and all of a sudden the lights are on, you're on TV, and now your mistakes, you're playing with real bullets. Even a spring game, they know they're not playing with live ammunition.
Right.
Until that happens with offensive linemen or with linebackers, it's going to be, you really don't know what you have.
And Steve, specifically, Micah Parsons is who you could be referencing. Start him on the inside, throw everything you can at him, right? And I don't think it's a matter that Micah can't handle the inside. I think they just wanted to throw all the language at him, throw everything that you could see at him, and then let him go back to the outside where maybe he's going to play more instinctively and go from there. So we're going to see how quickly he can make that adjustment.
And one of the challenges to that position is that guy's calling your defenses.
Yeah.
So there's a mental aspect that's going to be involved here. Do they have to simplify things down because he's in there running the show, or can they, like you said, move him outside and let somebody else run it? We'll see. They're going to miss Brandon Smith a lot because he had an uncanny ability to get some things done.
And Jason Kabinda.
Yeah, absolutely, Kabinda as well.
I mean, they both knew how to put everybody in the right positions up front. They were very good at that. And especially Kabinda was a great communicator. Koa Farmer's a guy that made the transition a couple of years ago from secondary to linebacker. He's now become the leader of that group.
So Nick, very physical, smart too. Jesse, very smart. And Micah's just a freak. He's an animal. He's 242, running pretty fast, running pretty good for us, especially because he played D end. So him seeing that linebackers looks good. All those guys, I'd say they're ahead of the curve. I think surprisingly, they're picking up the defense. They're all pretty smart, and they're getting better each and every day at spring ball.
In fact, I'll take it one step further for that. He was referencing Micah Parsons, Jesse Lucetta, and Nick Tarburton because he used first names there. That'll be a key part. Secondary, it's interesting about Penn State. Penn State played a lot of defensive linemen. They also played a lot of people in the secondary the last couple of years. This is where I think you start to see the benefit of that because that is not an inexperienced group back there because they played.
Yeah, they're going to be a lot younger, obviously, but that's what you do in those games that are out of hand or even in tight games. You want them to see different coverages. You want to see different stuff. Expose them early so that they are ready to go right away because look, I think defensive back is the hardest position in football in a lot of different ways in the modern game because passing schemes seem to be so sophisticated and offenses, they're changing up a lot of different stuff. And if you have a good quarterback that you're facing, it is so tough to defend in modern football. But they got a lot of talented guys. They lost a lot of experience, but I don't think they lost a lot in talent. It's just a matter of how well they're going to step up.
They got John Reed back.
And there's a guy that's played an awful lot of football and at a very high level. So, I mean, hopefully he stays healthy and he's able to go in there and be a leader because there's a guy who's played some very, very important football.
Last year, Lamont Wade played a lot in that nickel spot, which is inside. I mean, does that help him make a transition to safety?
Well, I think one of the things when you're playing nickel inside is usually because they want you to match up on a receiver inside, not necessarily the tackling part. And I think the challenge for him is going to be because of his size. You know, how tough is he? What kind of tackler he is, because while the inside guys are getting their feet wet and while the linebackers are getting their feet wet, they may get some fastballs coming up the pipe.
Jay, you mentioned tacklers real quick. Steve, we were talking about it earlier. They lost, their top 6 tacklers, 7 of their top 8. I'm not sure what the statistic is. So we're going to find out who's going to bring the other guys down for sure.
Absolutely.
Special teams next as we continue after this. Welcome back. For decades here, special teams has been a focal point at Penn State. It's always been extremely important. Now, we found out graphically, especially with the numbers were down in 13, 14, 15, how important it really has been. When you watch Penn State special teams the last couple of years, what kind of difference has it made, Todd?
Oh, man, it is enjoyable to see these guys go, and so much of it is desire, right? And when you get the guys going and they want to beat their teammate down to the punt returner or the kickoff returner, and you know, when you get a group and a roster this talented, you're just going to have special athletes on special teams as well, and the results are immediate. It's one of the things Coach Franklin talked about at the very beginning when he came in. He wanted to personally take special teams to a new level and get it back to where it was before, and they have done that, and it has reaped big benefits for that.
And the place kicking part, though, last year, that was a little bit of a struggle, and you also didn't have great range. In other words, you had to move the ball probably the 25 to feel good about scoring. You'd like to get the ball to the 35, right, Jay, and feel like at least, okay, now we're in points range. Now what else can we get?
No question, and that impacts play calling, impacts a lot of things. Watching the games last year, I kept saying, God, they got to get a good fake field goal package because you line up, they're going to rush the field goal and take some pressure off your kicker. But when you talk about the entire special teams package, they got a lot of points out of kick returns, punt returns, great field position, and those are key. And obviously, who replaces Barkley on those kick returns is going to be
and coverage too. I mean, they covered really well.
Yeah, covered really well.
Really, really well. So James Franklin, he gave us an update on where special teams on this day where it stands.
We know who our punter is in Blake Gillikin. I do think we have some competition at snapper, although Vasey did a really good job for us last year. And kicker, we got Landis. We got one kicker right now. I think obviously Gillikin I think can do it. He did it in high school. We'd prefer not to do it. There is an aspect where he may do kickoff, and it showed he's pretty good at that. And from all the people we've talked to, the kicking gurus plus our internal people, that's an easier kind of job to handle, punting and kickoffs, where field goals is a lot more technical.
And the last guy I think to do all three was Anthony Farah, and you went through that with him. Did he wear down doing all three eventually?
Not really. I mean,
we
were scoring a lot, but not really. I go back. I'm one of those old school guys who goes, you can't kick and punt. Give me a break. My first year at Virginia, Chris Gardocki was kicking, punting, and doing kickoffs for Clemson. Did that in the NFL for a long time. So I'm sounding like that Geico commercial. Defense wins championships. You can do all three, but ideally you'd like to have somebody that's really good in all three areas.
And my guess is Blake Gillikin is the kind of kicker that could pull it off if necessary. Now, you mentioned the range. I don't know where he'd be field goal range-wise, but look, I was just noticing they only had 9 made field goals in the entire season. Look, they added, their math was by 7s. They scored touchdowns. They didn't settle for field goals a lot, but there were some decisions that Coach Franklin had to make where he decided, you know what, we're going to go for it on 4th down because I'm just not confident in the kicking situation.
And extra special teams. That's what they had during the course of the year. You can see where they ranked. They were outstanding in terms of the ability, and part of this goes to flipping the field. That's where Blake Gillikin has come in. His ability to flip the field, I think, has made such a difference in everything that they've done.
Well, it sets a tone for your defense. You talk about a great defense, again, scoring defense. A lot of it has to do with what you do in special teams. It has a lot to do with turnovers. When a team's got to go 85 yards to get a touchdown, as opposed to 45 or 50, it's a big difference.
Yeah, and my guess is that deep receiving core, you're going to see some of those fast guys on the return teams, on the coverage teams, getting down there making some tackles.
And again, we go back to flipping the field. You can see what Penn State did in terms of field position last year. That made a big difference for them as to what they did. That's what Blake Gilligan has the ability to do. He's just going to get better. John Reed also back. DeAndre Tompkins was great at punt returns last year, but John Reed is certainly around.
It's going well. I was surprised because I had to work so hard the previous year when I was playing at catching punts, and it wasn't something that was natural for me. But when I came out here to start up spring ball and started catching it, I was like, it came back easy. So I was excited. I was surprised. I'm like, I'm doing all the techniques right without thinking about it. So it was something I was really happy about.
A talented, intelligent player that they get back in multiple areas, whether it's corner, whether it's slot, or whether it's on punt returns, John Reed. Coming up, Penn State, in so many ways, won the offseason. Todd will take a closer look at that. We'll discuss it as we continue with Blue White Tailgate after this. Well, you want to win the season, obviously, win as many games as possible. But, Todd, it looks like they won the offseason at Penn State.
Since the Fiesta Bowl, the day after, Saquon Barkley announced that he was going to the NFL draft, and then Steve spent most of the winter in New York City with the basketball team, right, for the Big Ten tournament and then also the NIT.
By the way, in the month of March, just so everyone knows, the Knicks won 3 games at Madison Square Garden.
Penn State.
The Rangers won 3 games at Madison Square Garden. Penn State won 4.
There you go. And Mr. Jones has a new high-rise apartment in Manhattan.
Very
absolutely.
nice.
But look, facts are facts. Penn State was in the national spotlight.
When it comes to combines, technique, and it's the little things, and the form technique while you're running a 40 or a form while you're doing a shuttle, where to place your hands on bench, this and that, just little stuff is really different with combine and game training.
Of course, Saquon Barkley excels at both. After training for the Combine in Florida, he goes to Indianapolis, rips off 29 reps of 225 in the bench press, hits 41 inches on his vertical, and zips to what he feels is a disappointing 4.4 in the 40. His coach knew before the Combine Barkley and Mike Gesicki would shine.
You got Saquon and Mike that are going to test freakishly well. I think they got great film, but they're going to go there and blow it away in terms of raw athleticism.
Spot on from Coach Franklin. Gesicki's draft stock soars after his 41.5 vertical and 4.55. He cements his status with more solid routes at the Nittany Lions Pro Day.
This has been a long process, but honestly, it's just beginning. All the combine's over, the pro day's over, the senior bowl's over, all that kind of stuff. It's all over now. So now it's just meetings with teams and just kind of finishing this thing out strong and enjoying this process.
Little doubt Penn State is the most talked about program after testing by NFL personnel. 8 players invited to the combine, many of them with standout performances.
And we're not really interested in being, an NFL pipeline or an NFL feeder. I think that's just a byproduct of the other things that we're doing well and the success and type of kids that we're recruiting and developing here. I also love the fact that we got a guy that's being considered as a top 5 pick. So I think we'll have the whole gamut. I think we'll have a bunch of guys get drafted, a bunch of guys do well at the combine, and then we'll have some really high-end guys as well. So I think it's an exciting time.
Really exciting time, guys, and also really exciting to see the guy on the right there, Scrap, back in the building and wearing the Steelers stuff. How about that? When you talk about NFL personnel and you have Scrap in the building, that is really cool. But, Jay, Coach Franklin said, look, we don't want to be an NFL factory pipeline. That's not the main goal, but that is the end result when you do some of the things that you've been doing as a program and send 8 guys to the combine and test the way that they tested.
Oh, no question. And look, regardless of what you say, you want guys that want to come here. When I was still coaching, we talked about guys who want to be on a great team, want to get a great education, want to go to the NFL. Right. If those are your 3 goals, it's hard to beat a place like Penn State.
Yeah.
And and let's be honest about it. Everybody was there ever a player that you recruited, like really recruited, where they didn't have the goal of going to the NFL? I mean, seriously.
Well, everybody's got that dream, no question.
Which then brings this into focus, because now they're seeing with this program, it can be a route if everything goes well for you.
Yeah, and Dwight Galt all of a sudden catapults himself into being one of your most important assistants, right, in the strength and conditioning team, because kids see what Deshaun Hamilton looked like when he first started, and then they see what he looked like when he was done. And it's not just the 8 guys that were at the Combine. The Pro Day, Saeed Blacknall's numbers were fantastic. And, so they see that transition from what you were when you first started with the program to what you are at the end of it.
Which then brings up, I think, something else. And I know this is a side topic, but we can get into it maybe a little bit here. They talk about players, quote, getting paid on the collegiate level. There are so many things that you get by being in a college program. One is great strength conditioning, speed, drill. I mean, those are things you'd have to pay for, Jay.
Well, you saw Barkley working out in Florida.
Yeah.
That doesn't come for free.
Right.
Whether it's your agent or it's going to come out of your contract. So all these guys feel like, that they've got to go someplace and train. Maybe this is something where these guys start to realize I can stay here in State College, work out in Aluba Hall, and work with the guys that got me to where I am. I mean, it's always made me laugh as these guys all of a sudden feel like they've got to go somewhere with somebody else who doesn't know them as well as the guys in their own building. And we'll see if that changes, but I hope it does.
And there's a lot of talk about Barkley, of course. Is he going to be the #1 overall pick in the draft? But I don't really think it matters from this standpoint. He's going to be the #1 overall running back. So if you're the top guy at your position, unquestionably, I think that's pretty cool. And I think really actually the really cool moment from the Combine was Troy Apke running the 40 and him hitting 4.34, 4.35, and Deion Sanders going right in the middle as he's talking about something else. He sees him take off and run. He's like, wait, that guy can run. I mean, he can run.
Yeah. Obviously, he hasn't watched a lot of Penn State football because everybody knows Apke can run.
Right.
And by the way, he gets it from his mom. His mom was a track athlete at Penn, not his dad.
Yep. Yeah, exactly right. His mom was a great track athlete. But I think what they've done is, since the Fiesta Bowl to this point, they've all enhanced the image of the football program by what not only they've done athletically, but how each of them has conducted themselves. I mean, they've all interviewed well.
Yeah.
That makes the whole place look great.
No question.
All right, so coming up, we'll talk with Frank Bodani. We'll get his impressions. It's an all-York show, Todd. We'll bring Frank Bodani from York. And then at the end, we will take a look at our keys to the game. Yeah, I'm going to give you some time to think about that. But Frank Bodani's coming up next as we continue with the Blue White Tailgate Show after this. Welcome back to the Blue White Tailgate. We get ready for the Blue White game, 3 o'clock in Beaver Stadium on Saturday. And very pleased to be joined by the outstanding writer and columnist for the York Dispatch, and that's Frank Bodani. Frank, welcome. Great to have you with us.
Awesome to be here. Thanks for the great introduction. Looking forward to football again here.
We are looking forward to football. So I'll start with the basic question with the usual brilliance I bring to this set. What are you looking for Saturday?
Well, I guess, I was thinking about this. Just guys who stand out, like guys who you think you're wondering, is he going to be an impact player? Could he be a starter? Those types of guys. Does somebody kind of make a splash to you? Because, hey, most of us are not going to be able to judge the offensive lineman, even though the offensive line's a big issue and a big question. I mean, and I don't know, how do you do that with the competition in a scrimmage anyway? But guys, I think, like Lamont Wade, who's moving the safety, the linebackers who everybody's talking about, the wide receivers like KJ Himmler. I think to me, if you're a fan, you're looking to see, hey, how confident that guy look? Does he look like he belongs? He looks like he could be a starter. I think that's what I'm going with.
Frank, Jay Paterno, quick question for you. As you look at the schedule coming up this year, we've talked before on the show that this team might actually be more talented than maybe a year ago, but might not win as many games. How do you feel about that?
Oh, that's an excellent question. I think the schedule is, people like it in some ways because they get to see bigger games at home, so Penn State has a lot of their tough games at home. But to me, it is a tougher schedule, and I think that's definitely true. And to me, this would be a typical kind of transition year a little bit for Penn State because the overall talent might be better, their depth might be better, but how do you know you're going to replace those marquee performers? But to me, so I could easily see the record going down a win or two. To me, one of the X factors would be quarterback. And if they get the kind of play they could get out of Trace McSorley and then having Tommy Stevens back there, maybe that equalizes things. But yeah, definitely fans gotta know the schedule could be a loss or two more, sure.
Hey, Frank, it's Todd. Look, this is the 5th year for Coach Franklin now. How do you think he's approached Blue-White Weekend maybe differently than coaches in the past, or the way that Penn State has done it from a football perspective, and maybe everything else that goes around with it too? Because it's a huge recruiting weekend as well. There's a lot of official visits, unofficial visits. How do you think Coach Franklin approaches the Blue-White Weekend?
You know, I mean, there's a lot of enthusiasm, obviously. You know, fill up the place, talk about how important it is to bring the family together. I don't know if that's really a lot different, just maybe, you know, the enthusiasm is just part of his personality. I mean, I think it's a learning curve for these guys, too, because of the recruiting rule changes. So all of a sudden now they have guys on official visits. They have so many recruits that they have to take care of this weekend, recognize that it's a huge weekend. And I don't know, it might be one of their busiest, in a sense, their busiest couple days of the whole year when you look at it from that point of view. So I don't know. I think there's not, maybe you have to be smart about the blue-white game. I mean, Bill O'Brien was in a desperate situation with depth. Like, how do we play this thing, right? Because we can't get anybody hurt. But I think just the enthusiasm of bringing the fans together. I mean, you know, it's State College in April, right? So it could be, we've seen games where it's 40 degrees and raining and blowing sideways wind and cancel thing at halftime, and then we've seen games where it's been 80, and it looks like it's going to be in between this week. So
you mentioned Trace McSorley, Frank, in a previous answer. Where have you seen his development as a quarterback as you've observed him the last couple of years?
Trace's development. Just his decision-making, I would think. I mean, he has, to be effective, he has to make decisions on the run a lot, use his escapability, or not even his running ability so much as just being able to elude pressure, make the dashes when he needs to, but yet be accurate. And, you know, I can't imagine the decision-making that you have to have every time in that offense with that type of skill set. So I think he's become a smarter decision maker, a quicker decision maker, and I think he's become more accurate. I think maybe that's even the continued next step is how accurate is he. And, you know, we saw the big jump in him as a starter when all of a sudden using his legs more effectively, and he did that, which kind of, to me, really spurred their winning streak 2 years ago. So about that, it's just he has the instincts, right, to play that position that probably you can't teach. And just using that gift to the full extent, you know.
Frank, an absolute pleasure. Thanks so much for the time you gave us. We look forward to seeing you in the stadium.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys. It's great talking to you. I appreciate it.
Frank Bodani. So far for spring games, the top attendance is 60,900, and that was at Florida State. Now, I'd like to point out that all the tickets were sold for charity at Ohio State, 72,000, but they drew 47,000. It was not the greatest of days. They're talking about huge numbers this weekend. What kind of impact does that have, especially not just on the players, but also on the recruiting part of it?
Well, I think the most important thing is it's obviously important for the players and recruiting, but I think what it does is it's a program builder for fans because you have kids. You know, we all know what tickets cost, and when you have 3 kids or 4 kids, it's prohibitive to come up to 3 or 4 games. And Saturday being free, and for years there were discussions about charging it, and Joe always said, let's keep it free. We want kids in there that are going to be fans down the road, or maybe come to Penn State as students. So I think that may be the biggest impact of this game.
Thanks, Steve. You just took my keys to the game. The fans was going to be my keys. I'll have to think of something. I got a couple minutes to think of something else. We'll see what we can do.
Sure has gotten awfully bitter over that.
That's a segment for the show on the off season. Now he's like griping about the keys.
Piggybacking on what Jay said, though, there's a lot of people that can't get up there in the fall on Saturdays that have a lot going on. It's a limited number of dates that they have home games. This is their opportunity to go see a football game at Beaver Stadium, regardless of the cost. It's their chance to go there and enjoy it.
Yeah, I'll get into that a little bit later to really steal more of your thunder.
Go ahead.
All right, so let's go social. All right,
Let's.
I get to quarterback that.
When I was in college at Cafe 210, social meant something else completely.
And that's a different segment for
coffee and ale.
That's a different segment for the after show. Okay, Joe K. in Barnesville. Given Lamont Wade switched to safety, you're concerned about his coverage skills.
I think it's probably more to do with the depth at corner. The thing that would concern me is how good a tackler he's going to be, because that's going to be key back there.
I don't have any concerns about his coverage skills at all. He's got the speed to get it done. I think, look, Marcus Allen had a lot of tackles from that position. We got some inexperienced linebackers. You hit the nail on the head, Jay. The safeties are going to have to tackle.
Next up is Ron M. in Indiana. Ron's question is Trace McSorley now the unquestioned leader of the offense with Saquon Barkley gone?
I'm not sure he wasn't with Saquon.
I agree with that.
But I think there's any question about it, and he's got it. I mean, if whatever you want mentally and leadership-wise in the quarterback, he's got it.
Took the words right out of my mouth. He was the unquestioned leader last year, but that goes to Saquon Barkley's personality, that he would do that. I can see Ron's point. Saquon Barkley was the most talented player in the backfield, but Trace McSorley was the leader.
I've always told people Saquon Barkley made everybody around him better. Trace McSorley made Saquon Barkley better, which I always thought was interesting. All right, now Mike D. in State College, your turn. Mike says, given the number of players lost to the pros in graduation, what type of record would you consider to be successful in 2018?
Oh, man, you're jumping
That's
the gun
tough.
on that. That's tough.
That's tough.
But look, Wisconsin comes on the schedule. Nebraska's going to be better. Michigan State, and we kind of said this earlier in the show, this might be a better team. It might be a better team talent-wise and may not win as many games as last year, but I still think this is a good football team.
Part of it, when you judge a schedule now in the Big Ten, you've got to judge who your crossover games are. Penn State's crossover games include Wisconsin and Iowa.
Yep.
I mean, both here, but that's tough.
Well, and I'll answer it this way. Our expectations of what a successful season may be 10 wins again. But I can tell you from Penn State's perspective and Coach Franklin, it's a Big Ten championship.
Yep.
You have got an experienced team, and you've got Ohio State at home. Yeah. So you expect to win the Big Ten.
Right. And even when you look at the non-conference, Pitt is going to be much better than the team that played here last year.
Well,
and
you shouldn't lose a non-conference game.
No, you shouldn't. But that quarterback that Pitt got changes that program. It changes that program.
He does. Very good player, no question.
As much as it pains me to say that.
Right. All right. Keys to the game. We'll let Todd go first. Okay.
I want to see good quarterback play. Yeah. I just want to see the third-string quarterback. I want to see Clifford. I want to see some of the guys make some throws. Trace a couple years ago really shined. Tommy Stevens last year. I want to see what happens if they would need to go to the third stringer.
Well, I'm going to piggyback off that because I want to see Trace McSorley take a series or two, not get touched. Because, all these kids get a chance to see him play live. I'd like them to at least get a chance to see what he's like. But keep him healthy, keep everybody healthy, and get into the offseason.
Yeah, and just a side note from what Todd said, I'll go away from keys for a moment. I love the fact when I drive into this game, I see mom, dad, kids in car. Mom, dad, kids. After the game, kids running the field. That makes an impression on them for the rest of their lives. They'll be Penn State fans forever. Hey, we're looking forward to it. Jay, Todd, great. Appreciate it. Alicia Facer, thanks for everything you did on the show. Thanks for joining us on the Blue White Tailgate.